Welcome to Wigglesticks TV. This project started when I collected a frame and a few other parts off Gumtree. Just put it in the back of the car and then got it home to see what it looked like. The frame was in pretty good condition. It did need some refinishing, but overall it was a good score, I think. Once I got the frame home, started looking at the little bits and pieces, leakages, and starting to clean them up and see what we had. Overall they're in pretty good condition, well, okay condition, just needed to clean. Bonus was it had a K&N air filter in the airbox. Started to look at the wiring next. It was a bit of a mess, the harness, mainly dirty and a bunch of dodgy connections, but once I sort of started stripping it back and finding where all the issues were, wasn't too bad. Decided to also try and rig up an engine start button. This didn't really last a long time. It did look good when it was placed in there, but from a functionality point of view, I've ended up losing it towards the end. One of the most satisfying things was soda blasting the frame. Came up really good, comes almost like brand new, and yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out in the end. Had a few nice parts turn up over the journey. Vortex top triple clamp, which was good, but it ended up meaning I had to find a new lower because the different spacing between the SRAD and the K1000 front end was in not best condition, but it was just a bit of rattle can over the top, so I ended up trying to sand it back at first, but ended up hitting it with a soda blaster to get this nice finish in the end. Came out pretty well, I think. Yeah, it looks pretty much like a brand new finish, same as the other soda blasting. Forks ended up hitting really well, everything looks nice, and then I started to play around with how the clocks would mount. I wasn't happy with this GSXR 600 plastic one, so myself and Dan started to weld up this custom bracket. Worked out alright in the end, and I'll use that when I get this into full track mode at some point, but yeah, mounts really nicely. Brakes were the next on the agenda. Found these nice Brembo calipers from a 748 SP. Just needed a bracket to get it to work with the K1 forks. This wheeler came with the wrong size rotors, so we ended up getting some EBC rotors, 320mm, and put them on. And now the whole system is working really well with new braided lines, etc. Facebook Marketplace turned up some nice carbon frame protectors locally, which was handy. These are a little hard to find. Also the rear sets turned up in a little bit of dodgy condition, but they weren't actually cleaned up all right in the end. A bit of soda blasting and whatnot, and they came out quite nicely. Fitted up really well. Next was the painting of the front fender, just a plastic one. A few issues with painting, but it worked out all right in the end. Around this time also started to look for a new swing arm. Found one only a couple of 100 Ks from my house, which was handy. Also just needed a bit of a clean. Hit it with the soda blasting and it also came up yeah, like it was brand new. Really love that soda blasting process for cleaning aluminium especially. Also did the push drive and everything that you can see fitted in. It's really nice. Started to look like a bike a little bit at this point. It's good to get everything together. Seeing it on two wheels was really good. Exhaust ended up turning up from the States, which was great. Didn't have any instructions, so sort of had to figure out exactly how all these bits and pieces went together. Just did a light restoration of it. I had it mounted in the wrong place the first time. Catch can turned up from the USA not too long after this. MotoGP Works is where this one was from. I still haven't got this installed yet, but it's ready to go. Started working on the seat unit next. I had this solo tail. Needs a little bit of work, but we started fabricating up that base for it, just out of metal with Dan, a little bit of welding, and it came up pretty good once it's sitting on there. Got my starter button relocated in a different button this time. Still didn't see the light of day at the very end, but it works. Rear brakes were next. Went about rebuilding the whole rear caliper, pulled it apart, new seals, pistons, braided lines, and a rebuilt master cylinder as well. Works really good. Next on the case was the fuel pump. Ended up finding all the bits and pieces, rebuilding it, and getting it into the tank. Had to block off one of the, I had a fuel injected tank, so I had to block off the return line, so to get it to work with the carbed fuel pump. Around this time, the new old stock cover for the gauge turned up, and I also managed to find an engine. I was in New South Wales, so...
Quick video of the motor so you can see what you bought.
It's one of those things where you really don't know what you got until it gets here, but the price was right, and I could actually find one which took quite a long time to source one, and it had the carbs as well. So as you force sporting down, it worked out alright in the end, and the gamble kind of paid off. After a few months of waiting, due to COVID, the engine finally turned up with the carbs, so then I just had to set about trying to clean it and yeah, seeing if it would turn over and what it would actually look like. So happy to report that in the end it all worked, and just a few minor glitches here and there. Ended up getting it into the frame without too many dramas. It's nice to see it finally in there. The Factory Pro stator cover that I did have was wrong, was from a K1 2000, but that was a relatively easy fix. Just need to get another cover. And then the other drama we had was one of the bolts was stripped in the engine, so we had to put a helicoil in, but that also worked out fine. Thanks to my mate Andy, who gave me a hand to do this. He had all the tools and everything, and I'd done it before. It was kind of daunting, but I think I would, now I've seen it done once, I'll probably be happy to do it again. I also ended up starting to look for fairing at this point. Found this second set of track sort of fairing, not in terribly good condition, but worked out alright for what I needed it for. The panels themselves are okay, just the paint was peeling, and for track day it turned out being fine. It's kind of nice to mock it all up and see it looking like a real bike again. It was a bit of back and forth at this moment, just trying to get the undertail to fit and other bits and pieces, but it's kind of a nice point to be at. After messing around with the undertail, got started to get the exhaust fitted, finally got the headers on. There was some conjecture about if they were fitted the right way, but after moving them around a few times and playing with how all the pipes connected, this is the way. You can see with the headers on it pushed the exhaust out, so it must have originally been meant to hang off a foot peg bracket or something. So then I just had to mess around with trying to make a custom bracket up out of bits and cardboard and whatnot, and ended up with a solution that worked. With the exhaust fitted, it was kind of now time to start thinking about how we might start this thing. So looking at radiators and other bits and pieces, discovering a few leaks along the way and trying to troubleshoot those. It ended up not being too bad in the end, but it was quite a frustrating point in time, both with the carbs leaking and also with the water pump leaking as well. With the new intake boots fitted and some other fiddling around, it was finally trying to see if we could start this thing. Car was leaking from the fuel rail as well. Good one, Dan.
Mine does that.
Not too bloody bad for no tuning, really. Sorry?
Even with the various leaks and whatnot, it was great to finally get it started. The air scoops also turned up at this point from AirTech. Went about fitting those, a little bit of cutting, but because they originally designed to go into an airbox, but they ended up fitting up okay. And then the carbs came out, found where the leaks were coming from. Well, one of the leaks ended up fitting new gaskets to them all. Yeah, it was quite a good feeling to get them all back together. We ended up moving on to other things after this. We found the leak from the fuel rail. A few other bits and pieces came along the way. Ended up fitting the license plate bracket. Also, yeah, did the regulator as well, rectifier. That was faulty, the other one. Also had to look at the water pump, took the cover off, replaced the gasket again, and put new Samco hoses on it. This one I fired up much nicer. Had a bit more of an oil leak that we were chasing, but it turned out to be too much oil in the K&N filter, so that was dripping down and making it look like an oil leak because it was transmission oil colour, but it was actually just K&N air filter oil that was leaking through the airbox down the back. Started to look at a few more cosmetic things at this point, looking at the front fairings, what graphics are going to be, cut some vinyl, got the new solo seat all painted and put in, and then started to fit a chain and sprockets. I'd never done a chain before, so it was a little bit daunting, but happy to report that it worked out all okay in the end. And from this point it sort of started to look like a real motorcycle again. It's all coming together, happy with how it looked, and it was time to give it a test fire again, which was eventful. Well, it did look like a motorcycle now. It did have its issues. Carbon wrapping the air intake tubes made a difference, but I found a couple of little electrical gremlins in the plugs, but it did manage to get registered on a Vic Club permit, which was a big relief, and it was great that it actually functioned, even though it had the odd issue still left, mainly the overheating. Carbon mudguard turned up also. Ended up replacing the high pressure oil line because that was leaking. Replaced the water pump because that was also leaking, and ended up replacing the radiator because the original radiator was blocked. And awesome to report that once all those things were fixed, the overheating issue was solved, no more oil leaks, and it was good to actually be able to ride it to a couple of little things. That's where we're at the moment, so it's awesome to get this far, especially since it just came from a box of parts in the first place. End up removing the starter button and put it back to the thumb because with a few issues I was having, it was the other starter button I had was too difficult to start in traffic or something if it conked out. But yeah, it's pretty much all done and dusted. I've got a slight issue to sort out now, but have managed to take it on a couple of coffee journeys. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.